Hi, this is Kimball Bullington, and this is my presentation for my Bike Across America plan. Something that's been on my bucket list for quite some time. So the plan essentially is to go ride my bicycle from one coast to the other. The charter gives you more detail on what this really looks like. I want to say right up front that stakeholders play a major role in the decision here. Even though the plan is essentially for a solo bike ride, there are key stakeholders, and if they aren't satisfied, this project does not happen. The scope of this project is a plan for a coast-to-coast bicycle trip and some trial rides. The trip is not completed in a single summer, and no leg of the trip will be completed this term. The deliverables from this project will be primarily a detailed plan, a presentation, which you're seeing now, and some training rides, as well as a budget for the trip. Risks to completing the actual bicycle ride would include family support, COVID, health, and my dad's health, and course conflicts. Actually, that would affect even the planning. Is my dad's health could sort of put a halt to the whole deal. So, what does a bicycle trip across America look like? And one of my favorite tools to start off with and define a project is a cause and effect diagram. And so I usually start with the 6 M's: manpower, methods, materials, machines, measures, and Mother Nature. I changed the names of manpower to people and from methods to processes. If it's not a manufacturing example, then I often try changing materials to information and machines to technology. But in this case, I'm going to change machines to gear, which seems to fit this particular project. And then after that, we pretty much have a working cause and effect diagram. So you see it here. And then I translated that into using Visio into a little more specific diagram and got in more detail, which I can do in Visio than I can do with sticky notes. And then finally took a look at the potential effects or potential causes and said which causes are most critical, and really comes down to people. I say dining the kids, those are my kids. And very early on, when I started talking with my wife about this project, it became apparent that she didn't believe this was justified unless the family was more involved than I originally scoped out. Mom and Dad are on here because I'm one of 3 primary caregivers for my parents right now. That's a big consideration. COVID becomes a consideration on the actual completion of the bicycle trip, or even the decision to go forward, because that could possibly affect the trip itself. Lights among gear sort of rose to the surface, as you'll see later, and processes. I didn't have all my processes originally were processes related to the actual trip and not so much to the plan. But selling the plan became apparent that was going to be a big deal and whether we should go forward or not. So which route do you take? There are quite a few routes across America, published routes, and of course there's practically infinite number of customized routes that you could take. So pretty quickly I narrowed it down to several routes. The southern route is by far the shortest, 3,022 miles. And if I'm breaking this trip up into 1,000-mile legs, then you've got basically 3 miles versus 3 segments versus 4 segments. Cuts a year. If I'm doing 1 segment per year, cuts a year off of the trip. Pretty big deal. It's also the flattest. The Route 66 route, which is Chicago to Los Angeles, and then supplementing that with the Chicago to New York City route is substantially shorter and than my longest route. Is sort of in the middle, and in the middle in terms of elevation gain, 141,585 feet. So this is measuring the climbs. The climbs. How much is this? Mount Everest is 29,029 feet. So the shortest one is almost 4, a little over 3 Mount Everest. This intermediate one is a good 4 and almost 5 Mount Everest. But this route, the Transamerica route, is takes 4 segments, at least 4 years, and wow, is almost 7 Mount Everest tall. So my decision. I did a factor rating analysis and came up with different factors that were important to me, not just distance and terrain. Probably should have included budget in here, but that's a factor of distance. But climate, safety, scenery, fellowship, and just sort of the story that I'd be able to tell when I got through. That's very important to me. And in the end, made me decide that the route I would really like to travel is the Transamerica Trail, the most popular route across the United States, coast to coast, most common bicycle route. Over 4,000 miles, 3 years. It's 4 segments, but if you start the first segment at time 0, then it would be 3 years cumulative. It'll be during 4 years, but it'd be 3 years from beginning to end. 14 weeks overall that I would be on the road, and about $9,000. We'll get to the budgeting and how I came up with that number a little bit later. So what are the risks? If you would take a bicycle trip across America and not look at risks ahead of time, that would be foolish, and I try not to be foolish. I looked at the potential, focused right here on the potential effects of failure. Notice some of them say serious injury or death. And so when I looked at those, I thought, well, I have to really pay attention to those. And my mitigating actions, recommended actions would be add blinking lights, which I really need to do right away, and don't ride after 6 p.m. Seek shelter in the rain, check mountain pass, and so on. So how much will it cost? Have some camping gear and some bicycle gear up front. I already have a bicycle that I'm going to use, though I probably should have included some tune-ups associated with that and some spare gear to go with it. So up front, if I were gearing up to go, about $1,250. Then for each one of the trips, approximately $500 in transportation costs, maybe $650. I'm saying per one cape. That's per segment, per 1,000 miles. Maybe $650 in food. I'm predicting each one of these segments will be right around 24 days. And in terms of lodging, maybe $850 per segment. So when I put all this plan on paper, a lot of this came from a combination of the failure modes effects analysis and the cause and effect diagram. And when I put sort of the major activities on paper, I actually completed most of the plan, but the end of the plan, there's still some actions to be done, particularly the long rides. My training, my milestones for my training include a 25-mile, a 50-mile, 100-miler, and a Natchez Trace. Natchez Trace is I would like to do from beginning to end, so it would give me an idea of what it's like to ride an extended ride. Natchez Trace 444 miles. So it's pretty close to half of one of my segments. But I figure if I can do half of a segment without serious injury or death, and then I'm probably ready to do the rest of the way. And what I still have to do in the plan is present this to Dinah and share that video. So that's my presentation, and it feeds the question, do I do this? Do I do this 4,000 miles, 3 years, 14 weeks, and $9,000? And in the end, that's going to come down really to, is this the best thing for me to do? This is the right thing for me to do, not only for my own sanity, but for my family. Thanks. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.